Alright, so now let's move on to the esophagus. Okay? So when it comes to the boards, they love this so much. They are either going to ask you about dysphagia, or they're going to talk to you about Odynophagia. Okay? Let's do Odynophagia first. What is Odynophagia?
Pain.
It's pain when you swallow. Okay? So whenever somebody comes and says, and there's a big difference in dysphagia versus Odynophagia, right? If somebody is hurting, they're hurting. Swallowing when they feel like food is getting stuck, that's dysphagia. So when it comes to Odynophagia, why does somebody have pain when they swallow? What happens?
Esophagitis.
So you're thinking of esophagitis, right? Esophagitis. So what are the common reasons why somebody would get esophagitis?
Candidiasis.
What about drugs?
Pill-induced.
Pill-induced, right? So you would think of people, and a lot of drugs that we actually use on patients, we don't think about it, but it can actually cause pill-induced esophagitis. Okay, so what drugs? Doxy. It's probably one of the most common antibiotics we like to use, right? So doxycycline can do it, but not just doxy, all tetracyclines can do it, right? What else? Bisphosphonates, yes. Which ones?
Alendronate.
So bisphosphonates, you have alendronate, pamidronate, right? Zoledronic acid is given IV. That is more to cause osteonecrosis of the jaw. But pretty much most bisphosphonates will give you esophagitis. Okay, what else? Candida. Candida is your most common, right? So most of the time when somebody has candida, if somebody's got candida in their mouth, most of the time if you have it in the esophagus, most of the time they probably have it in the tongue too. So if you have it in the mouth, you can almost assume this is candidal esophagitis. Okay? So if you're suspecting candidal esophagitis right here, right now, what are you going to do?
Swish and swallow.
So swish and swallow is good for oral candidiasis, but for esophagitis that's not good enough. You want to treat them with fluconazole. Okay? Fluconazole PO for how long?
8 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
You will treat for 2 weeks. And remember, if somebody's got candida in the mouth, if somebody's immunosuppressed for other reasons other than HIV, they can also have it. Okay? If somebody's using a lot of steroids, diabetics, they also can have. You don't have to always be HIV positive. But if somebody's got candida in their mouth, I think it's reasonable for you to check for HIV. Okay. CMV? Ganciclovir. Right? So that's it. They are definitely going to ask you this question. Candidal esophagitis, 2 weeks you treat. Don't say I'm going to do an EGD and make sure it's not others. No, that's not the answer. Do the treatment first. If the treatment fails, then you look for other reasons. Because candida is that common. Okay? Alright. What else can give you Odynophagia and esophagitis?
Caustic.
Huh?
Caustic.
If somebody is drinking some caustic battery acid or something, sure. Yes.
Eosinophilic.
Eosinophilic esophagitis is the big one. So EE, eosinophilic esophagitis can happen. These are patients, young people, are going to come with significant, severe, sudden pain, like food getting stuck in the esophagus, and a lot of pain is going to be present, right? And for them, when you do an EGD, right, what would you see? You will see some circular stacks like this and long longitudinal furrowing. There's nice pictures online you can see. They have like long streaks of white as well as this. Make sure it's not candida. It is eosinophilic esophagitis. And a lot of patients like this are prone for some sort of allergic conditions. Something that can give you a hypereosinophilic syndrome. Right? So if you have hypereosinophilic syndrome, most of those patients are allergic. They are the ones who can actually develop this. So look for concurrent conditions. So when you think of hypereosinophilic syndrome, how much should your eosinophils be greater than?
20 per high parfum.
Greater than 1500 in your blood. You're talking about on the biopsy, you're right about that. But I'm asking for hypereosinophilic syndrome. I'm trying to do a cross connection, make my way to hematology, like I said. So if somebody's got hypereosinophilia, right, your eosinophil count should be greater than 1500, right? What are the common reasons why somebody would get hypereosinophilic syndrome? The mnemonic is China. Okay. C for collagen vascular diseases. H for helminthic. I for Idiopathic. Never study one system as one system. They are all interconnected. This is how the exam writers will start here and take you into idiopathic hypereosinophilic syndrome. Okay. N for neoplastic, such as leukemias and lymphomas, and A is going to be for atopic, right? Such as asthma. So a lot of time when you have your patient with asthma, you'll see the eosinophil count is really high. And sometimes you can have patients who are coming with all sorts of reactive airway disease. Eosinophil count is high. Those are the type of patients will have increased eosinophils, can also develop eosinophilic esophagitis, asthmatics, atopic, allergic patients. Okay. Now when it comes to hypereosinophilic syndrome, hypereosinophilic syndrome, how do you typically treat them if it's idiopathic?
H2O.
Typically you'll treat them with steroids, yes. But if somebody's got too much eosinophils, before you start them on steroids, you absolutely need to rule out what? What infection do you must rule out? Because if you don't, they can have widespread helmet. Which one? Strongyloides. Always rule out strongyloides. Strongyloides before you start them on steroids for idiopathic hypereosinophilic syndrome. It's actually lateral medullary syndrome.
4 is 12 is medial. Never mind.
So lateral medullary syndrome, also known as Wallenberg syndrome, which is by affecting pica, that can actually cause. So strokes can definitely do it, right? So if you have a stroke, you can affect your pharyngeal muscles, and therefore that can do it. What else can do it? Strictures, sure. You can have strictures. What's that? You can have a Zenker's diverticulum, yes. Zenker's diverticulum. Good. What else? Huh? Achalasia, yes. Achalasia. Schatzki's ring, yes. Schatzki's. I cannot even spell it. C ring. Okay, and then you got esophageal cancer. Okay. So now when you suspect somebody as having dysphagia, right? What is your first step when it comes to diagnostic? Because it could be any of these things. What is your best initial test? It's a barium swallow. Don't jump to EGD. It's always going to be a barium swallow. Okay. So step number 1 is always going to be a barium swallow, and that's going to give you your answer first. Because once they tell you what it is, you know what to do. Right? If it's a stricture, dilate. If it's a stroke, treat the stroke. If it's Zenker's diverticulum, fix the diverticulum. You know what to do. Right? But barium swallow comes first. Okay, so that is achalasia. And then you have your Schatzki's ring. Basically, you dilate it. Right? I think from the point of dysphagia, the most important is achalasia cardia to know. Know about pseudoachalasia. Best initial is always a barium swallow. Always follow that with an EGD. Right? And then we'll move on to your big topic, which is going to be GERD. Okay. Now when it comes to GERD, very classic. I think everybody's got GERD, right? It's a very common condition to have, right? You basically have acid refluxing from here, shooting up and irritating your lower esophageal area, right? Now, why is that bad? On the long run, it's going to cause cancer, right? Normally, what type of cells should you have here? In your squamous, you should have squamous, right? But what happens is when you have this acid reflux, the squamous cells cannot handle this acid's heat. So as a result, it undergoes metaplasia. It undergoes metaplasia to columnar epithelium. Okay, columnar epithelium, and then from metaplasia it ends up going to neoplasia, and then you end up with cancer. Or pH testing of your esophagus, yes. So what you do is, you're not sure, right? You tried PPIs to see if it works, didn't work. You did an EGD, you're not checking the pH to know if the acid is coming up. So what you can actually do is something known as an impedance testing or a pH monitoring. Okay. The way you do it, they put a probe through the nose into the esophagus to check the pH. You can leave that in for 24 hours, or sometimes they can do a capsule endoscopy. Put the capsule to monitor the pH. They can do it both without PPIs and with PPIs to see if you're suppressing the acid. Okay, and that will give you an actual diagnosis. So if once your EGDs fail to diagnose it, the optimal way for you to diagnose it is going to be impedance pH testing or capsule endoscopy with pH testing.